For 30 years, the ANC has used BEE to cement its power, but in 2025, this weapon of political control is backfiring spectacularly, and it may be the very thing that finally destroys their rule. BEE was sold as a tool for justice, equality, and economic transformation, yet today the world is calling it for what it is: institutionalized corruption and racial discrimination. And the backlash is global. And it's growing fast. In this video, we'll show you why the ANC's greatest weapon may now be its biggest weakness. For nearly 3 decades, Black Economic Empowerment, or BEE, has been a key ideological cornerstone of the ANC's economic policy. BEE, which has always been presented to the world as a means to uplift millions and redress supposed historical injustices, is increasingly being exposed on the international stage for what it truly is: a vehicle for elite enrichment, political patronage, and institutional decay. Even more troubling for the ANC, global institutions and foreign governments are no longer willing to look the other way. The international honeymoon of Mandela is over. 2025 has become a year of reckoning. The ANC now faces a legitimacy crisis both at home and abroad. As global scrutiny intensifies, particularly over its land expropriation policies and its increasingly militant approach to economic transformation, pressure is building to abandon or drastically revise the very BEE frameworks that once gave the party its moral high ground. What once was seen as progressive reform is now increasingly viewed by world leaders as state-sanctioned discrimination, a direct threat to investment stability and minority rights. With international institutions, Western governments, and even tech turning their gaze and their fire on the ANC's domestic policies, the ruling party finds itself cornered. The very ideological tools it used to consolidate power may now be the instruments of its destruction. And as the ANC refuses to shift in its course, BEE may very well become the bomb that explodes its grip on South Africa. Never in its history has the ANC been as weak as it is today. Even during the 3 decades that it was officially banned in South Africa as a terrorist organization, it could still count on immense support from all over the world. What had made the ANC so strong, even as an underground organization, was the fact that it could always rely upon support not only from its communist allies such as the Soviet Union, Cuba, and China, but also on the post-World War II liberal democracies in North America and Europe. Even in 1964, when Nelson Mandela was convicted of sabotage by violently attempting to overthrow the South African government through acts of terrorism and by soliciting foreign military interventions, he was almost universally supported throughout the world, not only in Africa or the Communist East, but also in the West. It was this near-universal international support that the ANC enjoyed that allowed it to remain such a tremendously influential political organization in the decades running up to 1994, when they took power in this country. When the UK Prime Minister, then Margaret Thatcher, openly announced during the 1980s that her government would no longer support sanctions against South Africa in 1987, and called the ANC out for what they were, a terrorist organization, she was one of only a handful of lone voices in the West willing to speak up against the ANC on an international stage. Yet, even this international opposition from the likes of Margaret Thatcher during the 1980s was fleeting. In 1990, Mandela was released from prison, hailed as a hero, and won the Nobel Peace Prize alongside F.W. de Klerk in 1993. And so the ANC initiated its rule over South Africa in 1994, and for 30 years it managed to get away with every destructive and discriminative policy it implemented and every act of corruption, starting in massive scandal in 1996 with Sarafina, purely on the basis of the fact that it really stood above criticism on the international stage because of Mandela's iconoclasm. For years, the ANC managed to successfully maintain its reputation as this liberation movement fighting oppression under Mandela, with only a small number of right-wing politicians and political parties on the international scene being even willing to make any noise about the ANC whatsoever. By the way, if you find our work informative, you can receive free updates from us on WhatsApp. Just follow these steps. All of that changed this year as Elon Musk was appointed as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency in Washington, D.C. He started to become increasingly vocal about South Africa's BEE policies discriminating against minorities and white South Africans in particular. Musk even challenged Ramaphosa shortly after he signed the Expropriation Act into law and condemned the ANC for their openly racist ownership laws. This is a post that has been viewed by almost 60 million people and which has exposed the ANC's tyranny for the world to see. This was in February this year. Within a month, the World Bank called upon the South African government to revise its black ownership laws, which it rightly pointed out had placed South Africa on the wrong growth trajectory. Significantly also pointing out that the government's BEE regulations have become what it described as open spaces for corruption. But after these things continue to go from bad to worse for the ANC, with Donald Trump wiping the floor with Cyril Ramaphosa during his visit to the White House just a couple of months later, at this time, the Willem Petzer group extensively reported on all the implications of this historic visit in this video, which you can link to by clicking on your screen right there. The ANC is now in unprecedented territory with its corruption and tyrannical government missions exposed for all the world to see. As a result, it is facing increasing international isolation. Recently, US lawmakers advanced a bill in the US House of Representatives which opens up the possibility of imposing sanctions upon South Africa's government officials for implementing the ANC's foreign and domestic policies. This is by far the worst position that this organization has ever been in. International pressure on the ANC to change course is mounting, and all indications are that once bills such as the one I just mentioned are passed in the United States, the international isolation is bound to become completely unbearable. The United States of America has been at the forefront of international relations for well over a century now, and has long determined the geopolitical agenda across the globe, not just in the West, but also in Eastern Bloc countries and Africa for that matter. Do you like our content? Make this channel stronger by becoming a member of the Willem Petzer group. Just follow these steps right here on the banner beneath me. The ANC still seems oblivious to the significance of the historical power shift that is happening right in front of their eyes. In fact, as I pointed out in a recent video, which you can link here, they are currently even taking steps to further intensify their BEE regulations. The hard reality is that the ANC's refusal to reform its destructive policies with increasingly leading to its demise and international pressures, especially from financial institutions such as the World Bank, will eventually force it to reform. Will we see the end of BEE and the ANC soon? We can certainly hope so. The fact of the matter is, though, that the ANC of August 2025 is so weakened that its demise now looks far more likely than it did just a few months ago. In a recent video, we discussed why we may see the end of the ANC soon, and this video ties nicely into what I discussed today. For more information, watch the video on your screen right now. Your support is what helps this channel grow, reaching new heights and changing the hearts and minds of people. Just follow these steps written down in the video underneath me. Goodbye and God bless.